it's one of those very simple techniques that people can, chefs know, but most home cooks don't. So, you know, you get in the tomato season, and all these beautiful heirloom tomatoes start to come in, and people want to make homemade salsa, or in this case...
What's an heirloom tomato for an ignorant person?
It's basically a seed that's been passed down for generation that hasn't been hybridized with any other tomato varieties. Most of your Big Boy and Better Boy and all those are hybrids. You can't really replant from those seeds. You won't get the same tomato. Just like apples are often hybrids and have to be done from cuttings rather than apple seeds. Heirlooms, you save the seeds, you plant them to get the same tomato following year. And there are, you know, Andrew up there knows all the varieties. He can tell you what everyone is. But some people, like I was going to do got some stuff here to do a quick tomato salad, something you might put on crostini or bruschetta. But one of the things is people make like a salsa from scratch. They're excited, tomatoes are in, I'm going to make this great salsa, and the tomatoes end up sitting in a pool of their own liquid. So some people don't like the seeds, so they'll scoop out the seeds in the centers. But one of the simplest little techniques is just to cure them, which is nothing more than salting them ahead of time. So in here, these were cut up like an hour ago. I would usually give it at least a couple hours. What the salt does is, besides seasoning them thoroughly, not just the surface, but it brings out it makes the water out of it. So if you let this sit another hour, you'd probably double up on that. But it doesn't look like a lot, but that's the difference between, you know, grilling your bread for bruschetta and putting the tomatoes on and having it just soak the bread right through, or if you're just putting it out for appetizers, by the time the last one's eaten, it's mush. And the other thing it does is it doesn't remove much tomato flavor. It concentrates the flavor because the salt penetrates, the liquid removes it, and so the pieces become a little more firm, a little stronger in flavor, and they hold their shape. So they won't like just dissolve into whatever you're making. It's like a lot of people, homemade salsa just looks like salsa soup. So that's really the entire idea. It's just a very simple little technique. You also get this bonus, like this little bit of salty tomato liquid, which you definitely don't want to throw away. You can use for a million things. A lot of times I just drink that as a shot. It just tastes delicious. The essence of the tomato, just a little bit seasoned. So,
and this doesn't really change, the salt doesn't change the taste really?
The one thing I would say is you don't necessarily need a lot of salt to do this, but you do want to be conscientious of your end result. So if you're salting the tomatoes ahead of time, making a salsa, don't add any salt to that salsa until you've gotten it all pulled together and tasted. And I have a couple of times pushed the edge a little bit of how much salt, trying to figure out if I added a lot of salt, if I would get a better result. And arguably, once they're salted down heavily, you could still rinse them, as long as you make sure you let them drain again thoroughly to get some more salt out. But I find that just, a light sprinkle of regular old kosher salt, I think, since it's almost like a koshering process, you're covering this thing. So, and like I said, this can sit around for, even in the fridge overnight or whatever, for a party or whatever, and you'll still have little cubes of tomato that aren't falling apart and mushy and floating.
What's your go-to salsa recipe?
I don't have one because I rarely cook the same thing the same way twice, but a straight salsa fresca, just tomatoes, onion, garlic, cilantro, lime juice, and whatever your choice of spice, a good old-fashioned jalapeno or serrano is even better. I don't necessarily get too fancy with salsa fresca. The same with making like guacamole. So salsa fresca just mixed in with some avocado, and that's my preferred guacamole recipe. But it doesn't mean that I won't throw them over when I have the campfire going in the fall. Like toward the end of the season, I'll roast all those ingredients and pound it up in a mortar and pestle. I don't even know where. I think it's in the back kitchen. My good old molcajete, lava, grind it up. Tomatillos should be coming in soon. How are your tomatillos, Joe?
What's that?
How are your tomatillos this year?
Well, I mean, they're growing.
All right. That's something that I don't use tomatillos raw very often. That's almost always roasted.
What is a tomatillo?
Tomatillo is, people call them husk tomatoes because it looks like a green tomato with a papery husk around it, like a ground cherry. They're usually picked green. If you let them get yellow, they'll be a little bit sweeter, but that's not really what people prefer them to be. So they're picked green, and if you bite it, then it'll taste like a cross between like green tomato and an apple. And it's funny because he grows a ton of them. They don't sell well. People you can go. If you've ever been to any Mexican restaurant, they have a green salsa. Everybody assumes it's made with green tomatoes or something. So they're walking right past these things. They like the salsa, but try to convince people to try this strange new fruit. And they grow in droves. Once you get them in your garden, they'll reseed themselves. And then wherever they come up, they're happy. Just leave them be, and they'll produce another 20 pounds for you the next year.